Hello and welcome back to the Karma Stories podcast. I'm Rob and I hope you are having a wonderful day today. In today's episode, we're diving into some seriously heavy pro-revenge. The kind where the line gets crossed and things don't just get personal, they get permanent. From exposing a web of lies in a church community to catching someone red-handed with a voice recorder, these stories are all about hitting back harder and smarter. Let's jump right in. This story comes to us from ScaredyCat1122. My ex-mother-in-law sent her church friends to harass my daughters and I. I have now exposed her family to her church community, and she's getting shamed and shunned at church. My 46 female daughters, 17 and 15, have a strained relationship with my ex-husband's parents, 78 male and 80 female. My ex passed away in an accident last year, and we've had some major family drama since, due to his cheating and him leaving two boys born with his affair partner orphaned. She also died. Part of the drama has been my ex-in-laws trying to get custody of my daughters, and them also trying to live with us. First one, we're going to court over. Second one will never happen. Where we live, there's a weekend market with fresh produce, eggs, meats, and other products straight from farmers. This week was extra special since it was my youngest birthday. Since her party is later in the month, I decided to give her a budget and set her loose on the market to get whatever she wanted, mostly chocolates and sweets. After an hour, I did start getting worried, and just before I called her, she called me. She was crying, saying some weird people have cornered her. I ran to her with my oldest daughter to find 6 older women berating my daughter for being unchristian, for refusing to spend time with her paternal grandparents, or for wanting to be a good big sister to her poor orphan baby brothers. My daughters are the ones that found out about my ex cheating and the babies, so they aren't fond of the kids. It's trauma, and they are working with a therapist. I got between the group and my daughter, telling my eldest to go pay the stuff her sister had and to go to the car. Then I turned to the women, some who I knew from when we went to my ex-in-law's church, and ripped them a new one. They told me I was the worst for refusing to obey my ex-in-laws, like a good Christian wife. Barf. Eventually, the screaming turned too loud and we were all asked to leave the market. I met with my girls in the car, the women following me like a group of vultures. I managed to get in the car and drive away. After my girls went to bed, I got online to talk to another member of that church that I'm in good terms with. I told him about what happened, and after he apologized, he told me what was going on. My ex-mother-in-law posted this massive story in the church's Facebook group about how horrible my daughters and I are, how we are leaving them homeless and penniless. They inherited my ex's personal bank account and his life insurance, and how my daughters don't even talk to them. She also accused us of being the reasons she lost her grandsons. The boys are now living with a distant relative of my ex-husband. Basically, it was a sob story worthy of a Hallmark movie. And of course, they were getting all the love and support from the more extremist members of their church. This church and its members are a bit annoying, especially with LGBTQ+ topics, but they have a small saving grace. They are incredibly strict about cheating. It's a big no-no, be it from a husband or a wife equally. Now, how did she get around blaming me about their affair children without exposing the cheating? She claimed the other woman was our surrogate since I was unable to have more children. Then said I didn't want the babies because they were boys, which is absolutely disgusting to be accused of. Well, I decided it was time to clean up this mess, and since I was mid-divorce when my ex died, I had all the evidence needed, and since the divorce wasn't completed, I don't have any legal ramification for releasing all the evidence. I was off the next day and went to a print shop to get copies of all the delightful pictures of my ex cheating, his text conversations with his affair partner, the ones with his parents confessing to his cheating and getting support from them, my ex-in-laws harassing me about the divorce, and my coup de grace, all the emails and text messages of them bullying my daughters about their baby brothers. In one of them, they call my daughters bastards and telling them it was their fault their father died since they told me about the affair and I began the divorce. This one was literally 2 days after my ex died. I paid extra for all this to be printed in beautiful high-quality paper. Then, when I got home, I sat down for hours to make delightfully personalized binders. They look like the little prayer song packets the church give for everyone to take to sing hymns. The first picture when opening the binders is my ex and his side woman making out in our living room. Their faces are easy to discern, and the girl looks nothing like me, different skin tones and hair color. Underneath I wrote, ex-husband's name and affair girl's name love story. I took them to the church before service. There's a desk in the back with the songbooks for people that need or forget their own, and they never checked them. The gossip mill was quick and harsh. The names my ex and his affair partner got called in the Facebook were so bad, the pastor himself had to get involved just to keep things relatively PG-13. People were angry at my ex-in-laws for their abuse to my daughters, but what made me laugh was that I was still in the wrong for the divorce. But it is understandable that I failed on my duties after the shock, and I possibly will one day return to the light, unlike my cheating husband and his Jezebel. They used another word I can't use here, I imagine. I got 2 apology letters in the mail for my girls and an invitation to join the church for support. As for my ex-in-laws, they got shamed into leaving the church. My ex-mother-in-law made a post on her wall about how alienated she feels and how no one cares for the elderly anymore. How she wished her great son was still alive since he would have taken care of her and her husband. With what money, I don't know, since I was the breadwinner. OP added a quick edit at the bottom. It says, explanation of the will. My ex-husband had a will that named his parents as beneficiaries. As far as I was aware, he had told me that he had named our daughters, not them. I never pushed for me to be the beneficiary, as my own will has my daughters as the beneficiaries, not him. Jumping down to the comments on this one, we have one from a user called ChillStoner0604. It says, hitting religious zealots with proof of hypocrisy is always hilarious. The others will immediately exile them, as the public Christian image is too important. Another commenter called Mysterious Tie 7039 said, my jaw dropped at them suing you for permanent custody and also wanting to move in with you. How effing disconnected from reality must they be? OP responded and said, they've gotten really bad since my ex died. To be honest, I don't know if it's grief or something else. OP, I feel like they're looking for somebody to take care of them in their old age, because you did mention in another comment that he was their only child. They're definitely not going about it the right way, though. I don't fault you at all for what you did in this case. These people cornered your 15-year-old daughter and made her feel afraid enough that she had to call you to get out. That's horrible, and that'll be something they remember for the rest of their lives. Regardless of what kind of group your ex-in-laws were involved with, whether it was a religious group or a bridge group or anything else, honestly, you did the right thing. They deserve to know just what kind of horrible people your ex-in-laws were. And if that led to them being shunned from the group, well, that's completely on them. Before we get into the next revenge story, a quick shout out to my 3D printing shop, dangly3d.com. That's where you'll find Carmen Chameleon, our cookie hoarding mascot. There's a running joke here. If you subscribe, Carmen might share his cookie with you, but I wouldn't count on it. He guards that thing like it's made of gold. I've also got articulated dragons, fidget clickers, keychains, lots of awesome stuff. I'm based in Canada, and while there are tariffs on some US packages right now, plenty of customers have told me their orders arrived with no extra charges. And hey, if your order's over 40 Canadian, about $30 US, you get free shipping too. So check out dangly3d.com, grab something cool, and help support the show while you're at it. And now back to our stories. This story comes to us from Beer Belly Be Gone. Mess with my kids, that's gonna cost you a pretty penny, and get you in trouble with the law. So I've got an acquaintance, Richard, who has always been of the I know better than you school of thought. What makes it worse is that he literally received his PhD in physics from one of my country's top universities about 6 months ago. So he's not a dummy. The problem is, he thinks that because he's a physics genius, that means he knows better than everyone about everything. Just an example, my kids are in Montessori schools. This is a decision my wife and I reached together, and we're very happy with it. When he heard, he went on a 30-minute rant and lecture about how we're throwing our money away, and Montessori is nonsense. When I told him that I had read and even professionally translated studies proving the opposite and gave him some real-world examples, Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, Sergey Brin, Jeff Bezos, Larry Page, etc., he would not admit he might not be 100% correct. Not the subject of this revenge, but so you understand the person we're dealing with. Another thing that's important to note is that Richard does not have Asperger's or anything similar. We joke about this all the time, and he's been tested from here until next week. He's just a really smart, socially oblivious pain in the butt. Given all of the above, I try to limit my time with him, but unfortunately that isn't always possible. And last week, we were both at the same group brunch for a friend, Jack, who was visiting back home from overseas. I've known Jack since grade school, so we brought our families and made it more than just a long time no see type of thing. At some point later on in the afternoon, my eldest, Awesome, under 10 years old, came to me really sad and said she wanted to go home. When I asked her why, she said that Richard had just spent 15 minutes telling her that she shouldn't eat hot dogs because they're unhealthy, and he explained what went into hot dogs and what they're made out of. Awesome is not a vegetarian, knows that beef and chicken she eats used to be live animals, and has never professed interest in vegetarianism. At the same time, when a kid is eating a hot dog, they don't care or want to know what's inside. We spoke a bit, I calmed her down, and I told her to ignore Richard and go play with her siblings and her friends. Being a kid, she was thankfully easily distracted by something else and moved on. I didn't want to make a fuss with Jack or with Richard, so I just let it be. This turned out to be a mistake. About 30 minutes later, I heard Awesome scream and begin crying. I ran over to her. Richard had come up to her and knocked her hot dog out of her hand, saying she shouldn't eat that garbage. I handed Awesome over to my wife for damage control, and I took Richard aside and told him that A, you don't ever talk to a man's kids without permission. B, you don't ever teach a man's kids without permission. And C, you sure as crap don't ever touch a man's kids without permission. He doesn't have kids, so I still wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt. This turned out to be a mistake. Instead of doing the mature thing and moving on, he decided to double down on the hot dog issue. This was the hill he was going to die on. My kids shouldn't be eating hot dogs. Keeping Jack in mind, I disengaged and told him to stay the F away from my family. For the rest of the RV, I kept my eye on him, and he didn't come near them. Jack enjoyed, we all ate some good meat, end of the story as far as I'm concerned. This turned out to be a mistake. A few days later, we received a visit from a child protection officer who claimed that we were neglecting our kids, specifically Awesome. She came in and saw that while the house could have been cleaner, what house with kids is spotless, everything was fine. She sat with Awesome for a few minutes and asked her some questions, said everything was fine, and left. First thing I did was call a friend of mine who is a lawyer, just to be on the safe side. He said it looked to him like we were in the clear, but we should keep in touch with him just in case. Next, I began working the grapevine. It turned out that Richard had been offended by how I treated him after the hot dog incident, so he filed a false anonymous report. Being Richard, and never thinking he could ever be wrong, he was even talking about it as if people should be proud of him for what he did. I had to make sure though, so the last thing I did before dropping the hammer on him was confronting him personally. I set my phone to record and went to his house. He doubled down yet again, saying we were torturing Awesome. He's the one who called protective services, and he'd do it again in a heartbeat. This turned out to be a mistake. I'm not the violent type, but I swear I wanted to break the son of a bitch in half. I told him that if he ever came near myself or anyone in my family again, I'd have a restraining order put out on him, and I'd make sure every single one of our shared acquaintances knew why. I listened to the recording in my car, and his admission that he filed a false report came out clear as day. I immediately forwarded it to my lawyer, who said he'd get the ball rolling with some friends of his with the public prosecutor to see if we could get Richard in trouble using his admission. Still waiting on that, the wheels of justice turn slowly sometime. Then, I enacted my actual revenge. See, after he got his PhD, Richard bragged about the new flat he'd be moving into as soon as he sold his current flat. To that end, he renovated most of his current flat, including putting in lots of new and expensive features that required lots of electrical work. He did the same on his new flat. He did most of the electrical work himself, which is a big no-no unless you're licensed. I called an inspector on both of his flats, who asked to see certification on who did the electrical work. Obviously, there was no certification. It wouldn't surprise me if, Richard being Richard, he began arguing with the inspector that his work was good enough and he didn't need to pay someone else to do it for him. I haven't seen or spoken to Richard since, but I've heard that he had to bring in a certified electrician to examine every single change he made in both flats. This meant dismantling everything and having it inspected. Turns out the buyers of his old flat weren't happy with the delay in receiving the keys and were even unhappier when they learned why there was a delay. They walked away from the deal and are taking him to court. Because his sale fell through, he's now in the hole paying mortgages on 2 flats. I don't know if there was a fine levied against him, but I sure as hell hope so. Lesson of the story: you don't ever F with a man's kids. Jumping down to the comments on this one, we have one from a user called Coopering. It says, "That was a well-crafted report on, indeed, ProRevenge. Dick is lucky you didn't call the police on him for battery of a child." OP responded and said, "I know who and how he is, so I was willing to let things slide to not make things uncomfortable for Jack. As I admitted, this turned out to be a mistake. If Dick ever decides he wants to start up again, I've got a police report ace up my sleeve, but I don't want to F his life up that bad unless he really makes me do it." Another commenter down below called Back a Rocket said, "That made me angry just reading it. It was like he was purposefully trying to make you angry. Well done on not losing it at your friend's barbecue." Okay, I don't know if we're missing a little bit of context here or OP just didn't tell us, but is their kid the only one that this guy went up to and knocked the hot dog out of their hand? Or were they going after everybody at this event and saying to everyone that their hot dogs were going to kill them? I feel like they targeted the child because that's the only person at the event that wouldn't fight back or put them in their place. I agree with the commenter. I have no idea how OP managed to keep themselves contained at the event and not cause a scene, because I have a bunch of daughters myself, and if someone messed with one of them like that, I would have turned that into a spectacle, and I'm not even sorry about that. Well, that's where we'll leave it today, because honestly, sometimes not making a scene takes more strength than most of us could manage. If you're listening on the podcast, make sure to follow so you don't miss tomorrow's episode. And if you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below. It really does help us out. I thank you for watching and listening. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.